last day, right? We don't have like a farewell or big plenary. Right? Well, we do have one plenary in the afternoon for tea at the same time. We'll be hearing from some of our eminent speakers, sharing experiences on publications, tips on paper submission, paper acceptances, and this is particularly useful, relevant, we have found, for the younger faculty who might have a lot of questions. And I do urge the younger faculty to actually think about questions and things about your experience in the course of submission of papers and so on. And for those who are perhaps on the more senior side, and you want to think about things about journal recognition, some related to journal impact and so on and so forth. There are also opportunities for book publications for those seniors, because the general manager of the, who is a scientist himself of the World Scientific will be here to talk about book publication for those of seniors who are particularly interested in book. Okay, the second thing I want to say is I hope you have found the conference interesting and a wide variety of topics. I hope that you also think about submitting your papers to the Singapore Economic Review. You can submit anytime as you wish, all right? So there's no, we don't publish conference proceedings at all, because conference proceedings, as you know, in recent decades, is not worth much. So it's the paper submissions that got accepted as published in the journal that is worth a lot more. Okay, now today's session is extremely important, I think, because this is a topic which affects all of us in Asia in particular. Singapore, of course, is also badly affected. We have a very strong declining fertility. We have an aging population. It's a double whammy, right, for us. And we want to think about what can we do and what as economists can offer in terms of designing public policies, implementing public policies, which has so far not worked, you know. So we have to think nobly, what are the new ideas that we come across, and also sharing with us their experiences in their own countries. The speakers here, this session will be chaired by Professor Hall Hill, and we look forward to hearing from them. So I just want to say these few words, and also thank you all for spending time with us, coming to this conference. And of course, Singapore is not a cheap place, and you know, but you came, and I hope you make the best of your time here. Thank you very much, everyone.
Good morning, everybody, and could we all just have a big round of applause for Professor Houston Quah and his team. I've had the pleasure of attending, I think, all of these events, Houston and colleagues, and they've been wonderful. And it's amazing to put on this large-scale, important event so regularly and so beautifully. So thank you very much, Houston, and to the various team of supporters. We really do appreciate it very much. Okay, so welcome to this session, the challenge of declining fertility rates. You've made the right decision to come here. This is a really big topic with three highly eminent speakers. Demography has been around for a long time. In fact, the opening speech by Jeff Sachs referred to Malthus, and earlier views on the issue were kind of Malthusian. I remember as an undergraduate student reading the Ehrlich's book, The Population Bomb, and I found it absolutely terrifying at the time. I think from memory it was 1968 when the book was published. Since then, there's been a big change. Fast forward, and the demographic issues are now very different, as encapsulated in this session, the challenge of declining fertility. And a lot of demographic action is in fact occurring in this hemisphere. It's the case, I think, that the demographic issues intersect with almost everything in economics and in a sense international political economy. It links to macroeconomic issues, to household behaviour. It links to fiscal issues. It also links to international relations, especially the vexed issue of international migration. So we couldn't have a more eminent set of speakers. They're the creme de la creme of the Asian economics profession. Professor Charles Horioka from Kobe University, Professor Yasuo Sawada from University of Tokyo, and Professor John Lee from Korea University. I could spend quite a bit of this session talking about their academic achievements, but I think you want to hear from them rather than from me. But just to note, they've all made really seminal contributions to the literature. Two of them have been chief economists also at the Asian Development Bank. One has a puzzle named after him, which I think must have been, were you an undergraduate student when that paper was written, Charles? Or you were certainly rather young, if I may say.
First year graduate.
First year graduate student. So they're a terrific group of speakers, and we're going to hear from. The way we'll organise it is we'll have the speakers sequentially, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So please have your questions ready. I should just note that the subject is declining fertility, but the panel is all male. So we'll look forward to hearing. We'll look forward to hearing from especially from the women participants in this session. Okay, let me lead off with the first speaker, Charles Horioka. Thank you, Charles.
No, sorry. Maybe this one. Yeah, this one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yes, it does. Sorry. You want to here or there, whichever you like.
I want to use the
clicker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you click.
Okay.
Either way.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me, particularly Houston. Thanks for invitation again, and I'm enjoying this conference very much. So I'm going to talk about how to revert the fertility decline trend, although I don't have any concrete answer. But in my presentation, I'd like to cover three issues. First, I'd like to start by consequences or impact of fertility first. And then, secondly, I'd like to give you a very short stock taking of existing quasi-experimental studies, how a person intervention can be designed and implemented, what has been the impact. And towards the end, I'd like to discuss about the role of a social norm. Long-term fertility decision is, after all, driven by a social norm. So I'd like to postulate the question whether we can reverse the social norm trend towards the low fertility. So impact of low birth rate, Asamoglu and his co-authors just published a paper in NBR working paper, and it's very intriguing. So their study can be summarized in these two charts. Left charts, either chart horizontal axis is birth rate, and the left chart vertical axis is over 50 years, 5 decades per capita GDP growth. And right chart, y-axis is average wage growth over 5 decades. So you can see overall negative relationship, meaning that started from low fertility rate, that can actually enhance your overall country's per capita livelihood over 5 decades. So that's a very striking correlation. And Asamogo and his co-authors said this is a worse relationship. Their explanation behind this is if once population becomes growing slower and slower, then scarcity of younger workers induces a technological innovation. So overall per capita livelihood can be rather enhanced. Indeed, Japan is one of the front runners of low fertility rate. Actually, Japan became a robot country in 1980s already. So I actually, my intuition much with some of this overall macro cross-country long-term assessment. Having this said, you can see a lot of variation from this negative fitted line. So some countries do not follow this overall trend. And particularly, there are countries started from a high fertility rate, birth rate, and achieving a low growth rate. So, so what's the underlying causes behind this variation? So I can summarize three elements. Number one is a physical demographic dividends. You know, how much you have young population. And secondly, quality of population captured by overall human capital quality, education, health condition. And thirdly, silver dividends, how far old age population continue to participate in labor market and continue to contribute overall economy. And these are the different countries charts using the national NTA, the national transfer accounts. And left bottom is actually top left is Japan. And the yellow is a shaded area showing the first demographic dividend era. Japan already passed first demographic dividend era in the 1980s. Then a shrinking population and seems to be pushing down overall economic development. Down left is Thailand, and second from the down left is Singapore, and the third one from the down left is Korea. All past first demographic dividend era already. So actually, this country cannot gain out of this increasing the young population. However, they can still rely on improving quality of younger and working age population. That is the second demographic dividend. So one illustration. So from the left, second one is Thailand. So Thailand overall economic per capita economic development growth is remain positive in spite of the fact that Thailand already lost the first demographic dividend. But per capita GDP growth has been supported by improving education, showing in the orange, and health condition improvement, shown in green. So second demographic dividend is really critical to continue economic growth. And some country can push human capital quality enhancement, and so that they can continue per capita growth. And then third demographic dividend, LD, we did cross-country assessment how much each country in Asia still have a third demographic dividend, potential labor participation of old age populations, how that can support overall national income. And the last column showing potential silver dividend out of the GDP. Japan still has a 1.4% if old age population is fully utilized. I label this institutional exclusion because Japan, we have a universal pension coverage, very good. So everyone, including homemakers and self-employed and farmers, all included in the universal social pension program as well as the universal health program. So even if you are healthy enough after the age of 75 or 80, you have an economic incentive to shy away from labor market employment opportunity because you have a good pension support. So there are some room for improving incentives and redesign pension policy. And other country also has a potential to tap silver dividend. So next topic, what's the likely fertility enhancement intervention? So this is the very simple summary of stock taking of existing quasi experimental studies. Overall, child care support, physical support, like providing child care facilities, seems to generate a long-lasting positive impact. On the other hand, unified child transfers, cash compensation to stimulate birth rate, or, but bottom one, overall welfare reform seems to have either null impact or short-term, short-lived health services, some particular focused health interventions, such as subsidizing infertility treatment, that seems to enhance fertility for long-lasting mother. And then generally, on the other hand, there is no evidence. So, providing a better parental support can stimulate higher birth rate. So actually, overall, policy seems to be quite limited, and we need to learn more from different countries' experience. But this is the summary of our story. So finally, I'd like to talk about social norm, which is a fundamental element to support fertility decision. And Mainichi newspaper, which is one of the leading newspapers in Japan, they have been conducting nationwide opinion survey, random sampling survey, involving each time several thousand respondents since 1960s. So, and this unique opinion survey include the value. Two questions. First, whether do you think it's a good good convention to support old age parents? That's shown in red. Okay? And the other one is whether you would like to be cared by your parents, your children when you getting old. So that's the showing green. Green one is particularly interesting because one element, early stage of development, why you have a large number of children, old age insurance support. So, in absence of robust national pension program, naturally you have a demand for a larger number of children, so that you can have old age security supported by children. And that value is shown in the green. And in Japan, continuously declining. Yeah? Japan's universal pension coverage started in the 1960s, and that can be one reason behind. But anyway, we have a very good large-scale nationwide random sampling repeated cross-section, so we can pick major policy intervention, including universal pension coverage, and some labor market reform, and pension schemes, major improvement, etc., etc. So we pick different major policies. Then we conducted standard DID type of analysis. The result is quite interesting. Equal employment law, which was started in 1986 in Japan, seems to really impacted social norm change towards the smaller, less dependent on children. So I think equal employment law, our interpretation is equal employment law gave more secure labor markets income, and with that scope of getting your own income security in the future, you lose the incentive to rely on your children later on. So I think that's one evidence we are making. Our latest paper, together with Matsuda University Ogawa, Hiro Ogawa from now NBI and graduate students. And another interesting evidence we are getting, again using the same data set, is the role of danchi. Danchi is like a HDB building in Singapore. Danchi is a building complex mainly provided by public government agencies. It's a provision of a stable and clean and modern housing and residence. And in 1960s and 1970s, so people tried to switch from old wood-make traditional homes to danchi, modern housing. Then because of this huge demand for danchi, HDB-like building, government agency always conducted a lottery. Okay? So we have a lottery winner and lottery loser randomly assigned. And this is a very nice experiment result? What's the causal impact of providing Danchi protocols? Then we found Danchi really established two children norm and over almost 3-4 decades since the 1960s. Okay, so actually two children, those who are married, two children norm seems to be very, very robust, and Danchi seems to establish this two children norm. However, at the same time, delayed marriage has been progressing over time in Japan. So two children norm for those who married, plus those who are married, and marriage rate is increasing. Altogether, can generate lowering, birth rate or fertility rate in Japan. So that's our another latest paper. And yeah. Okay. So finally, another point. Also, this Rafaela et al. Paper, AJ paper, using a Brazilian natural experiment, they said watching a soap opera and watching a lifestyle of high-income people having only one child, actually that really generated social norm change towards smaller children. So actually, these evidence showing that it's possible, almost even in short term, to change the social norm, to switch large number of children to low birth rate. That has been possible. So lots of evidence. But final question is whether we can have a reverse social norm change. Now we are suffering from zero birth rate, and then zero population growth, and then how to enhance fertility rate. So I have no clear answer, no question, but there's a postulate whether it's possible to rebut this trend. With that, I will stop here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Yasser, for a very broad-ranging presentation, including the soap opera. Next is John Miley. John Miley, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to join this plenary session. And I'll try to focus on the 4 questions. First, why is fertility declining? Second, what are the economic consequences? And third, I'll move to the Korean evidence. So why has Korea become an extreme case? And of course, just summarizing these presentations, what kind of policies can make a difference? So as just Yasu Sawada explained that now we see the broad decline in fertility rate across very different economies. You can see much of the Asian economies experience declining fertility and below the replacement level of 2001 now. Especially the South Korea and Singapore now got into the lowest fertility rate. So of course this change is not just a decline in the labor force, but the age structure has been changing. That has a huge implications on the consumption and the fiscal situation and the growth and inflation. So the first question is what are the socio-economic forces which cause this fertility decline? First, income factors. Of course, higher income could increase the demand for children, as long as you assume child is a normal good, and so to say that. But now in most advanced economies, based on many countries, there is a shift toward the great quality of a child rather than just number of the children. So this is happening in many advanced countries. So naturally going to the pure but better children. So that's the one factor. But that's also reinforced by the rapidly rising the cost of the child rearing and education. Also, you have more children, you need a bigger housing. That's especially serious problem in South Korea, because in the urban area, the housing is very expensive. I think Singapore may be the same. And then the other issue is the great female educations. And female education increased significantly in the recent decade, and then also labor market opportunities too. Of course, this is clearly a positive development, But when marriage and motherhood impose the large opportunity cost for females, they are very reluctant to get into the marriage and having children. So that's the true in many countries. So this problem is particularly significant in many countries, especially including South Korea, because even though the labor market opportunities exist for females, maybe highly open for females, but there are traditional gender norms in the household. So females need to take care of their children in a very unequal share. So that's creates significant problems. And also, when the female decide to get out of the labor market to take care of their children, the problem is maybe it will hurt their career a lot. This is especially significant burden for highly educated females. So this is the current situation. And of course, there are many other causes, but let's just focus on these kind of things, major forces explained by the literature. And what is the problem of this fertility decline? We know that this all negative macroeconomic effect. Also, someone just mentioned the recent papers. Well, because in terms of the economic growth, quality of children or quality of labor force is very important. So great investment in human capital per child will increase the quality of human capital. So it's good for economic growth. And also, scarcity of the labor will create the higher pressure on the wage. So obviously there will be great investment in the physical capital, and also labor-saving technologies that will stimulate. So there are many evidences, but there are mixed evidences yet. But so at this moment we can conclude that, well, overall impact of the fertility decline on economic outcomes depend on the policies, institutions, and all other conditions. So also national characteristics. So we cannot just say, oh, fertility decline, this will be the disaster for the economy. So I'll get back to this issue again. So sometimes conclusion is sometimes I don't support the argument that to increase the fertility, you need to give up other opportunities. We should make a win-win situation. Fertility will decrease, but to increase the fertility, for example, oh, you don't want to educate the females, you don't want to give the jobs for them. That's the nonsense. Yeah? So it should be positive development. So that's exaggerating, but I'm saying basically we're trying to make the win-win situation, not only focus on fertility. So let's go to the Korean experience. So I'm just trying to advertise my 3 papers, but basically the other papers on Korea is a similar view. And one is the structural model, it's a macro model, and one is the long-term panel data, and they're trying to see the determinant of marriage child growth. And then the third paper is especially focused on the female education, which I'm very much interested in, and then trying to see the causal analysis. The papers here, the last papers will be presented in the afternoon session by my group. Okay, so why Korea is so particular? You can see now Korea is got into one of the world fastest fertility declines, and then it's now below 0.8. So it's amazing. And at the initially this decline, that's mainly through the economic development as well as the very successful family planning policies in Korea. I'll not get into details like China, but the later part, the most interesting part is since in 1990, it has become advanced economies, but it's continued to decline and get into the 0.8, very exceptional. So what caused this kind of significant decline in the South Korea? So we can see what was the particular situation in Korea. Then I look at the marriage, because in Korea, non-marital childbirth is less than 4%. It's a very unique Confucianism tradition is still there, and then institutions are very rigid here. Now we changed. For example, if you have a non-marital childbirth, you cannot send the child to the schools. It used to be. So now it's changed. But okay, what is the proportion of the never married women aged 25 and 49? In 1980, it was just 5%. Now 40%. So basically, they don't get married. But this is mainly driven by the females. I will just emphasize that. So, but here, because the marriage is in South Korean society is the prerequisite for having child, so obviously fertility will decline. So big question is the fertility decline is coming from the marriage decline or is coming from the fertility decline within marriage. So I'm just focused on the first part. So it may not have huge implications for other countries, especially European countries. But I want to just emphasize this may be quite relevant for many Asian countries. So more likely, I want to emphasize the social norm and gender norm would be playing a very important role in Asian countries. So this is to institutional change in South Korea. School enrollment rate increased very significantly. This is the most significant increase in the female enrollment rate, especially tertiary education, over the 10 or 15 years, catching up the males and then getting to the very high level. And the female is very well educated. But if you look at the employment side, it has increased, but still so famous M-shaped decline. Once they want to get married, they will get out of the labor market. Because you cannot really make it coexist your career and parenthood. I mean, that's the current situation. So this may have some impact on the fertility. That's what we're trying. But through the marriage, so that's the. Of course, before getting into the next stage, I want to just say that maybe females may decide, because now government implement a lot of policies, even though they decided not to marry, but eventually they will get married. We'll see. But that's another issue. We need much longer data, but we need to see some models for the data to investigate these issues. So I'll go quickly summarizing the several papers. This is the first paper is the structural model. This is the so-called 3-period overlapping generation model. So one female is born, and then you decide on the marriage. Once you decide on the marriage, you need to decide on the fertility sequentially, and then you need to allocate your time. Once you have a child, you need to allocate more time. So it's a career versus child welfare. So this kind of and then every decision will be endogenously determined. And then once you spend more time in the child, it gives the higher human capital, the growth rate will be higher. So there are some kind of trade-offs. So you need to make a decision rationally whether you get married or not. But here, a lot of frictions. Once you are highly educated, you need to decide to get the right spouse. And then also you are highly educated, your opportunity will go higher. So you need to make some decisions because depending on this gender norms, especially gender inequality at home. So if you spend more time in taking care of your homework, then you cannot really spend your time in the labor market. Okay, so you should trust this structural model, and then I just skip all the structural model calibrated for South Korea, and then the key findings. Okay, here what I found is the female education is important because it creates some frictions in the marriage market. You try to find the right spouse who will give the more advantage for the taking care of equally share in the house burden, and then also if you get the highly educated, you cannot really get the right pool of the highly educated males. I mean, this issue coming. So female education is important, and then especially marriage and the child rearing cost played a very important role. Before you get into the marriage, you will see that this cost, then you will decide not to be married. So this kind of issue is very important. So one advantage of this kind of calibration model, you can quantify the impact of any policies. So the bottom line is let's say I look at the South Korea's policy, try to combine all the policies, such as child care subsidy, marriage cost reductions, gender inequality, like the father will take the lead to take care of children. So raise the model implied fertility rate from current 0.75 in 2023 to 1.17. So 1.2 is it's still low, but from South Korea's perspective, it could increase. So the policy policy works, but policy will not really reverse this low fertility to the higher fertility. I will just quantify that. But policy priority is very clear, so you can see the lower economic cost of marriage and child rearing, and then improve work-family compatibility and the gender equality. So what data says? I just combined the Korean labor and income panel studies starting from the 1993, 1998 to 2022, 25 years data, and then trying to see those people when they decide to get married, when they decide to have a first child, and then what are the determinants? Well, maybe it's a determinant is not really, but trying to see the associations, at least I mean, what are the highly associated. This causality analysis we get into the next paper. So it's interesting. Highly educated men could be married more frequently, but more likely to get married. But highly educated females, based on these data, their marriage probability is declining because it's much more difficult, or they decide not to get married. Employment status. If you're employed, actually you are not really just try to get married, but if it is a regular job, actually your employment helps to increase your marriage. And home ownership is important. And then the housing price is particularly important in South Korea when decide to marriage. So if higher housing price actually discourages them to get married. You need, in Korea actually, you need decent housing, especially for newly married people. They don't want to go to the rural area and then have a cheap house everywhere. Also children, there are some different characteristics, but actually the employed people will be less likely married because they care about their career. So this is supporting what I said. And then household income and home ownership is very important. So income impact and home ownership is again. And then here, private education cost. There are other papers actually emphasize this private education cost. Primary education and secondary, junior level secondary educations are free in South Korea, but many parents are sending their children to the private schools to get higher education, to get access to the very good quality third-set education, very competitive in Korea. So that's the point here is that again, I mean, the cost of child rearing and education is important, and also having home is a very important issue for child Korea. And then particularly it's a highly educated women trying to get the employment, and then they are discouraged from having a child or being married. Yeah. Okay. So last 1 minute. So I'll just give the short summary of this final paper, and then you will listen more in the later. So this is you can see what is really going on in the higher education level, because the tertiary educated females, even within marriage, very low fertility. But so education, female education plays very important. But does not mean it's causal effect, because some other factors. If you don't want to have a family, you may go to university. So reverse causality. So you need to be very careful about this causality analysis. So what I should try to do here is Korea had a policy-driven exogenous shock in 1993. They expanded enrollment for tertiary education, and there was a discrete increase in the female college attendance. So what happened to those people? Those people's female higher education reduced the fertility, but through the marriage decline in the younger age, not a fertility decline within marriage. Once you get into the marriage, they will have almost the same fertility. So important thing is in Korea channels and marriage, how to make them get married. So policy suggestion is policy suggestions here. Well, you can suggest they want to get married, so marriage must be important. But maybe non-marital child birth should be encouraged in Korea. I mean, it's a kind of gender norm should change. So Korea is actually changing that. So now we see that. But here, more important thing is going back to my initial remark is low fertility creates serious challenges. But demography is not a destiny, because the human capital is important, also technology is very important. So, and then higher human capital for females should be consistent with the higher fertility. So this is the basically how to make their pursuit for career and parenthood should be provided by the government and the society. This is a very important challenge for South Korea as well as maybe more advanced countries. So I made another presentation in the 2 days ago. I'm just saying the future may not depend on this number of children or fertility. Maybe AI can solve all the problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chong-Hwa, for a really fascinating presentation, including with the Korean examples. Really interesting. Finally, is Charles. Over to you, Charles. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Al, and it's my great honor and pleasure to be a part of this panel on defining fertility. I'm Charles Horioka of Kobe University in Japan. So, let's see. Oh, my slides are... Okay, I would like to cover 3 topics in the time that I have. First, I want to present data on the level and trends over time in Japan's total fertility rate. Second, I want to shed light on the reasons for the decline in Japan's total fertility rate. And third, I want to explore possible policies for increasing Japan's total fertility rate. So the first topic, data. So let me show you this figure, and I'd like you to totally ignore the red line on top and just look at the blue line at the bottom. This blue line shows the total fertility rate in Japan during the post-war period. And you can see that it has been declining monotonically from about 3. Well, first of all, I should tell you that the total fertility rate basically measures the number of children that a woman has over her lifetime. And you can see that this total fertility rate has basically declined monotonically from about 3 children to just over 1 child, well below the replacement rate. And it's continuing to decline. If we compare Japan to other countries, Japan is not as bad as South Korea, which is basically the country with the lowest fertility rate, but Japan is one of the, and Taiwan, Singapore, China also have relatively low fertility rates, but Japan is not far behind. And if you confine yourself to the G7 countries, Japan is basically roughly tied with Italy for the bottom spot in the G7 countries. So Japan has a very low total fertility rate, not only absolutely, but also relative to other countries. And now I want to talk about the reasons for this, the decline in Japan's total fertility rate. And to do that, I want to show you this, go back to this figure, and now I want you to look at the red line at the top. The red line at the top shows the completed fertility rate, which basically measures the number of children that a married couple has. And you can see that initially it was declining quite sharply, as in the case of the total fertility rate. But since about 1970, there has not been much of a decline in completed fertility rate. So married people in Japan are continuing to have the same number of children, about 2 children. This corresponds to this, what you were saying. And so there has not been any decline in fertility among married couples. The decline has come because fewer people are getting married. And Japan has the same social norm as in Korea, that people seldom have children outside of marriage. So if fewer people are getting married, we will have fewer children. And to give you some, to show you some data on the non-marriage rate, the proportion of people who never marry in their lifetimes, this has used to be very, very low, but increased very sharply to close to 30% for males and close to 20% for females, and will rise even further. So a larger and larger proportion of people are choosing to never marry, and that is the main cause of the decline in total fertility rate. So we have to consider why people are not married. Let's see. Yeah, this slide here. Well, there are many reasons why people are not getting married, but I think these two reasons are the most important. The first is the deterioration in the wages and job security of young male workers. So due to the prolonged recession in Japan over the last 30 years, many young male workers in Japan have not been able to find well-paid and secure jobs. And this has made them hesitant to marry and start a family, and has also made women hesitant to marry them. And the second factor is the increasing job opportunities for women, which Francois also mentioned in the case of Korea. The increasing educational attainment of women and the alleviation of discrimination in employment have expanded job opportunities for women. And this has increased the opportunity cost of marrying and having children, and has increased the proportion of women who sacrifice marriage and childbirth in order to pursue their careers. So that's my discussion of why total fertility rate in Japan has declined. I now want to turn to my third topic, which is policies for increasing Japan's total fertility rate. But first of all, I have to consider whether there's anything wrong with low fertility. John Ma was saying that low fertility is not unequivocally a bad thing. There are some advantages to low fertility, but, and Sawada Sensei also mentioned that. But it is true that declines in fertility combined with increases in life expectancy will lead to a declining population and population aging, which in turn will lead to various problems such as a shrinking economy, labor shortages, declining saving rates, and a deterioration of pension finances and government finances more generally. So, although low fertility has some advantages, I think it also has some disadvantages, and it's probably desirable to raise fertility at least somewhat above the current very low levels. So let me first talk about the Japanese government's policy response, and then give you my critique of what the government has done until now. Former Prime Minister Kishida declared that increasing the fertility rate is the most urgent challenge facing Japan. And in 2023, 3 years ago, he established a new government agency, the Children and Families Agency, Kodomo Kateicho, where policies relating to children would be consolidated. Moreover, he pledged to sharply increase the budget for fertility-related policies over the following 3 years. And some of the concrete measures that the Japanese government took were these 4 measures: child-rearing assistance, building more daycares and so on; reducing the economic burden of child-rearing, for example, granting a one-time childbirth subsidy each time a child is born, making high school free, increasing scholarships, and so on. Third policy is marriage assistance. Many local governments have been holding matchmaking events. I think similar to this, what you have in Singapore. This, is it the social development unit? Is it? Yeah. Paying subsidies for housing and moving costs to newlyweds and so on. And the fourth policy is increasing the wages and employment security of young workers, making it easier for temporary workers to transition to permanent status and so forth. So these are basically the 4 categories of policies that the government has pursued. And I think they're a step in the right direction. And in particular, steps 3 and 4 are related to raising the proportion of young people who marry. And I said earlier that that's the main reason for the decline in Japan's fertility rate. So the government is, moving in the right direction, but I believe that more attention needs to be paid to adopting policies that make it easier for women to combine market employment and housework, child rearing, such as encouraging men to do their share of housework and child care, encouraging men to take reducing the working hours of men is one possible way of making it possible for men to bear more responsibility for housework and childbearing. So we shouldn't have target policies just toward women. I think we also need various policies that are targeted toward men. And one last proposal, which is my own proposal. I am currently writing a paper with my co-authors, Debashis Padai of Auckland University in New Zealand and Suradi Tang, Deakin University in Australia. And we have proposed making the benefit levels of pensions, public pensions, dependent on the number of children you have. So you get a larger pension benefit if you have more children. And we've developed a theoretical model to show that this kind of policy will in fact raise fertility rate. And moreover, this policy has an advantage relative to other policies, such as subsidies for marriage, childbearing, childcare, and education, because the cost of the policy will not begin until much later, until after the parents reach retirement age, meaning that the short-run cost to the government will be much lower. In any case, I'm running out of time, so let me give you my overall conclusion. The decline in Japan's total fertility rate is due to a variety of factors, especially the decline in the proportion of young people who marry, and that therefore a multi-pronged policy is needed to increase the total fertility rate. Increasing subsidies for child-rearing, child-care, and education may be helpful, but need to be accompanied by policies designed to increase the marriage rate of young people, such as increasing the wages and employment security of young workers and making it easier for women to combine market employment and marriage childhood. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Charles. Another really interesting presentation, and all three papers have drawn attention to the complexity of the issues and the sort of complex economic, social, political factors at work. The Korea-Japan comparison also particularly interesting, I think, in the presentations. Okay, I won't try and summarise the findings. They're three really excellent presentations. I'd like to now invite questions and comments. So the floor is open. Yes, right over the back is one. Yes.
Thank you so much for this very interesting panel. I'm Wyman from NTU. So I actually think that this is an important topic because early this year when Professor Mary Aichen-Green was invited to do presentations in the Asian Economics panel. So Prof. Bing Tai-Wu asked him to choose important topics. So we would expect him to say something on international monetary system, but he chose to talk about fertility. Yeah. So I'm glad to see that the same topic is actually also raised up here. So my questions is actually more directed to Professor Chung-Hwa Lee. I'd like to hear your opinions on this AI on birth rates. So in the past you probably cannot imagine this, but now with more AI, more intelligence robots, do you actually expect a rise in fertility rates or decline in fertility rates?
Thanks. Let's gather a couple of questions and then we'll go to the panel. Next up, Renate. Over here, please. Oh, you said and then Renate. Yeah. Please. No, please go ahead and then Renate. Yeah.
No, I just want to, sometime early this year, there was a task force put forward by the government here, which shows the importance of declining fertility rate, led by a minister. What can we do, and so on and so forth. So the interesting notion that came out of it was that we have been focusing too much on economics. What we have seen just now is all about economic variables, economic implication. What can we do? How can we manipulate this? And then government intervention through these variables. But they are approaching from the perspective of psychology. So there is a new, I mean, there's a, not a new, but maybe the psychologists have got this going for some time. I forgot the name of the theory modeling that they've done. But rather they said they should focus not on economic factors. Because if economic factors are very important, they would have worked. That's the point. And it's been tried at many places. So they said, well, let's focus on the value of children. Why do we want the children in the first place? What does the child provide to a family? Focus on that. And if you can somehow persuade the public to love and to want children, that's where you will get more children in the long run, and that's sustainable compared to what the economists have been proposing. So I just want to ask whether the panel have come across this kind of psychological modeling argument, and how do you feel? The other thing I want to add is Charles' point about to have more children, you need to have more marriages. I support that point, but I've written on it as well for the Swiss Times. I've argued that that's the important key factor. You want to produce legitimate children, well, you need to have more marriages. That's the start. Therefore, all government efforts should be towards creating more opportunities for marriage. And John Lee talked about this, mentioned social development unit. That's a direct government intervention. But on the other hand, people just take it for fun, subsidies of the government to enjoy leisure things. But you have to take it very seriously. Another one is, how about arranged marriages, the traditional form? Have anybody done a study comparing, the government intervention one way versus the traditional arrangement? Which is more effective?
Thanks, Houston. Lots of questions there. From memory, Houston, in Singapore a long time ago, didn't you have something called a matchmaking program called?
Yes, that's a social.
You had something called love boats, didn't you? I remember being here once and there was a love boat going out.
Cruises.
So, cruiser, sorry, that's a better term than love boat. Okay, Renate, please.
Thank you very much. I would like to go in the same direction as Houston's first part of his remark. I think, yes, as an economist, economics plays a role, but it is not the only thing that matters. And I really like Charles' remark on there should also be some changes in men's behavior within a marriage related to taking care of children, parental leave, and all these things. But I sense that there's another thing that may be of special importance in Asian countries, and that is that a lot of young couples, they see that there's enormous pressure on that their children are attending the right school and that they are really doing good grades, and there's a super pressure that their kid or kids become a success, so to say. And I think that a lot of couples shy away from this pressure. So what do you think about this hypothesis, and what would be measures in order to cope with that? I mean, it's not an easy thing then to say, okay, we are caring less about how well the children do in school. I think that's a big advantage of Asian countries, that they have so good schooling and education, and that they are so well scoring on all respects. But this comes with a cost, and how to balance these things. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So 3 really interesting questions. We'll have another round of questions after, but let's go to the panel now. There are questions, most of the questions actually to all of you, one particular for John Hua. So let's go across the panel. Can I start with you, Charles, and please feel free to range across the questions.
Okay, I'd like to address 2 questions. One is Houston's question about the psychological factors of why we have children. I think in a long time ago, before countries developed, people had children, lots of children, because they needed children as child labor to help them on the farm and so on. But then that need gradually faded away. But then we still needed children to take care of us when we became old and disabled. But then that need is also faded away because of the introduction of public pensions, long-term care insurance programs, health insurance, and so on. So in that sense, the economic need to have children has gradually faded away, and that may be partly explaining why fertility is declining. But hopefully there are other reasons for having children, the psychic reward for having children to interact with and so on. So hopefully we can somehow figure out some way to promote fertility by addressing those factors. And then let's see. Oh yeah, in terms of Renata's comments, I agree with you completely that one problem, at least in Japan and other Asian countries, is this overemphasis on the children's achievements. The children getting into a good school, the children getting a good job, and there's so much pressure not only on the children but also on the parents and they have to spend so much time, energy, and effort to make sure that their children turn out right, and that could be one factor that is, making people reluctant to have children. And this is Becker's quality-quantity trade-off. If you have to have such a high level of quality of children, you certainly can't afford to have more than one child, and maybe you can't even afford to have one child. So that's definitely something that we have to somehow deal with this problem. I think we should try to make people more flexible. That there's nothing wrong with a child not going to college. There's nothing wrong with a child doing an unconventional job. We should somehow figure out some way to increase, sort of weaken this, the pressure on the children and the parents. Thank you.
Yes, John, in general, but also there was an AI question for you.
Yeah, I think it's very excellent questions. I'll try to very short, and then because the questions are great, but we will have the round of the questions. On the role of AI and in general digital technology on fertility. So obviously, if we assume that the decision on marriage and childbearing depends on the cost and benefit of that decision, AI will have impact on the benefit and cost. Extreme case, you do not get married because you have all kind of similar affections from the having of AI or humanoid. That's also even in the workforce. AI could replace the labor force. this is the of course, this may be the extreme case. For the marriage, but another way is for South Korea case. Again, this is going back to the arranged marriage issues, but there are certainly frictions in the marriage market. Is finding out the right match of your spouse is always very costly. So in this case, AI could help to get the right spouse very quickly. Now we see a lot of digital matchings. So these kind of things could happen. So we cannot just say because of AI, no one will have a child, but it will have some certain impact, but still quite uncertain. So the big question is why people try to have a child, and then of course, the economists are focused on the economic cost and benefit. So that's why, even my structural model. But as I showed, the quantitative result, even if government implement all coordinated policies, it can increase fertility from around 0.73 to 1.2. So you cannot go to the 2 or 3. So there are other issues. And I think it's I support this psychology effect. I like your ideas of opera. I believe there's a kind of social norm have some impact on the people's psychology, and then they try to choose certain lifestyle. I understand that. So how would you make having a child and then have a decent family is valuable for your life? Your life goal. This is the one big issue, especially current young people who do not have very secure jobs, and then everything is quite uncertain, and then income growth has been declining. Even South Korea used to be 8% growth per year. Now it's only 1.5% growth. How we can persuade them to have a decent family and then maintain. Arranged marriage, I just quickly, arranged marriage was, I think, great value added, but was arranged. And we should be very careful speaking anything here. I was very happy for a long period. But now it's the young people, they choose to take divorce. So at the time when I was young, I thought once you get married, you should keep the marriage for your lifetime. So I still believe that. I'm not just for record for my wife. The last question is a great question. So this is basically this household work burden is very important. But again, I mean, maybe the more important thing is this child education. That's a great point. And then there are several papers that emphasizing this was the big issue. In some sense, I support that because for South Korea case, people decided to send their kids to the tertiary education, especially very prestigious universities starting from the 1990s. So that's giving a lot of pressure on the family, whether they should spend a lot of, because they spend a lot of money for private education. So by looking at that evidence, people may decide not to get married. I mean, some people supported it, but in a way, I mean, I'm not believe that's the most important factor in South Korea. You can argue that housing cost is also very important for that. Whether your parents support that additional income for the family is also important. So also, South Korea's case is their great zeal for good education has been there for such a long period. So all of a sudden, fertility has been declining very quickly. You cannot really blame on their higher demand for good quality of education. I still believe good quality, South Korea's huge demand for good quality of education is good for the society. The problem is this may be excessive investment. So we need judgment on that. Maybe some households are really creating excessive investment for their children's education. That's the problem, maybe social waste. So we need some adjustment. So more important thing is how to reduce the cost and then getting into the fair competition into the prestige colleges, elite colleges.
Yeah, thank you. As for the arranged marriage first, my elder sister got married through arrangement. And I'm from a western part of Japan, Osaka area, so relatively conservative than people in Tokyo. And typically there are matchmaker, middle-aged women, keeping lots of CDs. And CDs called the fishing letter in Japanese legally. And then these matchmakers really play a very important role to search and achieve a better match. So I think definitely AI era, AI we can craft AI-based matchmaker so that matching quality and matching efficiency can be dramatically enhanced. So I think I'm rather optimistic. And then I really learned a lot from Jongba and Charles' presentation. I think my summary is declining fertility rate we should decompose into two parts. First one is the extensive margin, whether married or not. And then the other one is the intensive margin, given marriage number of children. So I think both Japan and Korea, intensive margin, 2 children more, or some fixed number of children more. So I think that part seems to be stable. But the question is how to encourage more marriage. I think that's the very important. And then seeming a trade-off, quality, quantity trade-off. People have image, young people have image. It's very difficult to get married and spend money for sending kids to cram school and better college and better occupation. So I think that this norm or this value needs to be changed. So I think one way is to craft like Charles' suggestion, pension benefit depends on the number of children. I think that can really change the norm because in order to be eligible, I think I need to marry and I need to have children. And also at the same time, related to Houston's question, I think a value affirmation, marriage is good, and also having children is good. Because after marriage, I have 2 kids, and after marriage and after having a child, you can have a very new, a whole new world, lifelong experience. Without children, I never go to Disneyland or Disney Sea. So I think a whole new world you can enjoy, and it's like a life, really worth experience. And also now it's an era of a lot of divorce. So I think value needs to be carefully crafted. Marrying as early as possible, that's enhance your joy, lifetime joy. But at the same time, marriage can be reversible. You can get divorced and you can try another marriage. And multiple marriage can even much better. So I think some value can be a really crafted, very nice manner. And particularly, I think value needs to be designed so that female labor force participation and child bearing are not trade-off at all, but rather complementary. So I think, in that case, housing allowance and other, child care support, etc., etc. These are very, very important policy measures. So I'll stop here.
Thanks. So on new experiences of kids, I'm looking forward to seeing my 4 grandchildren tomorrow when I go home. They're noisy but fun. So can we have another round of questions? I see some hands. So let's have one more round and we'll gather and go to the speakers. Yes, right over there, please.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentations. I think that I would like to make two more points. One is the aging population, Korea, Japan, is creating rural-urban problems. In rural area, only elderly people remain there. Young people go to Seoul and Tokyo. So we have to cope with those urban-rural problems together with those low fertility. Second one is AI and robot can assist elderly workers to keep on contributing to the society. Japanese engineer said, we are looking for any kind of robot we can create. What kind of robot will be needed to assist elderly people to keep on working to the society? So if population becomes elderly and aged, but if they continue to work for contributing society, then they can postpone their pension payment and so on. And the contributors will increase more. So I think AI and robots are very important to make people work longer. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, at the back, please. The microphone.
Thank you. This is a very important discussion, having family and then economy growing through population increase, etc. What I wanted to hear, but I didn't so far, the word family. The family is very important. I think the way I grew up, if I look back to myself, I think we always wanted to have a family, saw family as a support system, and we just wanted to have a family to follow through. So we taught our children, you have to grow up and build your own family rather than career. So there are other social sciences rather than economics which is looking at family values and families, seeing the family as a support system can actually enhance fertility and increase the population. So can economics actually reach out to those disciplines and reframing the question of marriage and fertility more through family and family values, and family as an institution that would support fertility? And is it in a way we can look forward to? Thank you.
Thank you. And one last question over here.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in these important discussions, and thank you so much for all your excellent presentations. I have one question for Sawada Sensei, and also another question is for Professor Charles. First of all, since interventions like Japan's 1986 EEOL, the Danjo Koyo Kikai Kindoho, successfully shifted high fertility and children's SOH insurance norms downward, what concrete policy media tools could reverse the current low fertility norm? This is the first question. And for Professor Charles, would you mind to share how effective is linking pensions to the number of children versus improving young men's job security and equal housework sharing? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for great presentations. I work in the environmental policy area, so I often go to environmental policy conferences, and you often hear the view that people don't want to have children because of the state of the environment. I didn't hear anybody mention that, and I wonder if that's just kind of a parochial view of environmental policy. People is there any evidence that people are not having children because of their fears for the state of the planet?
You hear that comment quite often, actually. It's a good question. So let's go to the panel again. There are general questions and there are a couple of specific ones. Yes, can I start with you?
Yes. First, the Yoshino-sensei question about rural divide. I think, again, I can be more optimistic using a digitalization, different type of digitalization instruments as well as AI. I think now work from home became a norm, and that can be pushed and carefully designed so that rural and urban workplaces rather integrated seamlessly. So I think there are, in that sense, I think new technology can at least partly mitigate the urban-rural problem. And as for the question of the family value, I think family value can be kind of modernized. We stick with the biological line and forced marriage, continued lifetime. But I think we can be more flexible. Marriage can be reversible, and also family can be formed outside of biological relationship, but kind of such legal framework. So I think new type of marriage value can be set so that again facilitate young people's marriage area. And the last question about the EOL, can you elaborate your question? You are asking about
the EEOL.
Yes.
Interventions like Japan's 1986
Yes.
EEOL, the Danjo Koyo
Yes.
successfully shifted high fertility and children SOH insurance norms
Yes.
downward.
Yes.
What concrete policy or media tools could reverse the current low fertility norm? Do you think? And do you have any?
You mean the new campaign or intervention to reverse this, right?
Since it's the interventions.
Yes, that's my point.
Yes.
BID analysis of paper clearly showed EOL was a driver to shift the high fertility to low fertility phase. Yes.
Is there any concrete policy that's really can reverse the current fertility norm? So
Yes, that's a point, whole point. And then my presentation said no, I have no clear answer. But now I learned a lot. We need to divide into two parts. Marriage, and the other one is number of children of married couple. So I think the first one, extensive marriage, is really the area we need to switch on. So I think a whole range of different type of monetary and non-monetary instruments to facilitate the marriage. I think that's a key. Yes, there are many concrete examples, including those suggested by Professor Holyoka. Thank you very much.
Yes, John.
I think it's the question on the family value, and I think very important. Of course, demographic research or population study is not just the economics, but they are very broad and cover many, many topics. And from economics point of view, this is basically value of family formation, because that's why I emphasize that being the mother, and then value commission, and then once you get the marriage, and then once you have a child, what would be your value? Why the value is so different between the highly educated women versus highly educated male, or highly educated women versus less educated women. I mean, this the kind of there are some kind of social problems, social norms, and then we need to change it, I mean, so to make everyone is happy. So how to preserve family value? But again, I mean, the issue is more complicated, because we understand that value of family formation has decreased significantly, not just economically, but also non-economically. For Korea case, basically now every children will go to the urban area. So once your parents used to live in the rural area, non-Seoul basically, but more than the half of population is the Seoul and Gyeonggi area. So children are separated from their parents. So what is the family value? I mean, so when they got together for such a long period until the parents died, the value was so high. But now that's basically the old times. So I agree, we need to promote the new family value. So that's is maybe very important issue over time. Over time to increase the fertility. I think it's the environmental issues. I know some people say that this maybe less population would help to preserve the environment, and also the Korea's case, because most people are living in the urban area. So this is the population density is so high, and then it creates a congestion and all kinds of problems, and not just the environment, but traffic and everything. So maybe the decline in the population for Korea may not be bad. I mean, it would help to the. So on aggregate terms, there are discussions whether less population will help to improve the environment, improve the all kind of congestion problems. But I have not seen any paper actually using individual data. If you have a strong belief in the environment value, which decided to have a small number of children. So maybe there is the discrepancy between the personal decision versus aggregate decision.
Okay, first I'd like to thank everyone for very insightful comments and questions. I'll just respond to 2 or 3. First of all, Professor Yoshino's comment about the urban-rural problem. I think that's very important, and we have to deal with that problem at the same time that we deal with the fertility problem, because rural areas have mostly old people, urban areas have young people are concentrated in urban areas. So in fact, to solve this problem, many local governments in rural areas have been pursuing various policies to try to attract young people. For example, having matchmaking parties, or providing subsidies to young people who move to those areas. But I think more policies are needed to establish, to rectify this sort of spatial or geographic imbalance problem. And there was one question directed to me about my policy of linking pensions to the number of children. And I think it's a very insightful comment that this solution does not necessarily, there's a disconnect between that proposal and what I identified as the causes of the low fertility. And I would be the first to admit that. So it's not really the panacea for the problem, and the only policy that we should pursue. And I agree completely that, this policy may encourage people to get married, because it, in Japan, having children outside of marriage is very rare, and you have to have children, and so you have to get married to have children, and you have to have children to receive a higher benefits, so a pension benefit. So I think it will help in terms of encouraging people to get married, but it will not necessarily help women to balance, their family life and their career. I think we have to adopt completely different policies to address that problem. For example, reducing the working hours of men so that they have more time to do housework and child rearing, encouraging men to take maternity leave, changing social norms, telling men that there's nothing wrong with cooking and doing the dishes. So I think a whole set of policies are needed to completely solve this fertility problem. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So this has been a wonderful session, I think. We've covered so many topics. We've gone from soap operas to arranged marriages, to gender norms, to housing issues, robots, and a lot else. I think it's been wonderful. Lots of issues on the table still. As I understand, I won't try and summarise the discussion at all, but as I understand it from demographers, it's very hard to reverse a fertility decline. It's almost always irreversible, so it looks like we're left with it. Another issue on the table we haven't discussed a lot is migration. Jeff Sachs at the beginning mentioned the world will become African later this century, because that's where the highest fertility rates remain with the largest population. So many other issues on the table. I suspect for this kind of panel with these outstanding speakers, it would have also been fun to have heard from a sociologist or a psychologist, because we've covered so many non-economic issues as well, which the speakers have done so well. So please join me in thanking all three speakers.
Right, thank you, Professor Hall, and our speakers. Lunch is served in the foyer, and we have a